Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Ite Namani.
I was born in 1948, Dr. and Mrs. Pekela, Dr. Stanley and Evelyn Pekela, and we lived a very comfortable life in the Berkshires, which is the center of western Massachusetts. I was raised a Catholic. In fact, I was very active in my youth, St. Dominic Savio Club. I was a member when I was in grade school. I was also an altar boy for 7 years. Celebrated that for a long time. Of course, I went through the traditional First Communion, Confirmation, etc. And was a practicing Catholic, and for most of my young adult life, my youth, let's put it that way. After I graduated 8th grade, which was a parochial school, I was taught by nuns up until 8th grade. For a few years prior, I went to the local school, but then I think 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, I went to St. Joseph's. And then I went to a private school for high school. And at that time, I started questioning a lot. That was a good break for me. I was a boarding school. It was a prep school, like I said. I was very active in taking classes. You know, I studied philosophy. I studied Descartes. I studied Sartre. I studied all this. And that was as a student. I graduated from Cornwall Academy, valedictorian, and I was supposed to go to I had several choices, and I went to my father's alma mater, the University of Vermont, in Burlington, Vermont. And I started there in the fall of '66. I went through my first semester of my second year, and my professor of religious studies, comparative religion, said that there was a new temple, a new Hindu temple of some sort. He heard rumor up in Montreal. So I had to do a paper for that class, and so he said I could do my paper on this new temple. So at the beginning, this was the beginning of the year, we had to pick a topic, and so we would spend that year, or that semester, researching that topic, and the topic I chose was this new Hindu temple. So I walked into the temple after ascending 4 flights of stairs, after I found it, finally. And I walked in, and it looked like a repurposed bowling alley, which is exactly what it was. And there was this shaped head, kind of a small individual standing there, and he was mumbling something. I'm not sure what he was saying at the time. I know now what he was saying. And as I walked in the door, he asked if he could help me, and I said, I'm looking for a temple that's supposed to be in this building somewhere. And he says, you're here. Would you like to see God? And I said, well, I didn't expect as much, but you know, if he's available, sure. And so this is after 5 minutes. This is what, his name is Shivananda. And Shivananda Das, he was like me, he was not in favor of the Vietnam War, and he ended up having to leave the Montreal area because they found out he was there in lieu of the draft, but that's another story. I was there, and he took me to see Lord Jagannath. And when he took me to see Lord Jagannath, of course I genuflected, and he did his dandavats. And he was taking a plate off, and he said, would you like some prasadam? And I said, it depends. What do you mean? What is it? I mean, I didn't know he was giving me drugs or mushrooms or what, you know. He said, no, it's sacred food. It's like, I said, is it like communion? And he said, yeah, it's just like communion. And so then he gives me a chapati, a couple of chapatis, but I ate one, and the other one I kept. And I said, boy, you guys do it right. We only get little wafers back where I come from. And you've got this huge chapati. You call it this huge wafer. I didn't even know a chapati. I never heard the term before. And so then I went and talked to him a little bit. It was brief stay. He gave me a few photocopied or mimeographed BTGs, and there was no books in those days. This was '67. At least he had no books that I could afford, and I think there may have been a book or two, but I didn't get any books. I just had a BTG. And he mentioned, he said, "What are you here for? You know, what brought you here?" And I said, "Well, I want to do a paper on this new temple," and that was my introduction.
We saw the devotees on David Susskind, and by we I mean me and my sister. So my sister, soon as she saw them on David Susskind, and they explained everything, I kind of just said, "Wow, this is amazing." And then I realized that, you know, I really don't have anything going on. Just like I was thinking, this is what you do when you don't have anything else going on. I realized I didn't have anything, you know. And then my sister went to the temple like right away, right after David Susskind's show, and moved in and kept calling me, bring me a blanket, bring me a box of tissues, bring me this, bring me that. And I started visiting the temple. And I recognized a lot of the devotees because for years and years and years I had seen the devotees dancing and chanting on 34th Street, in the village, you know, at my school, City College of New York, CCNY. And yeah.
I was raised Catholic, but by that time I was distanced from the Catholic Church. Obviously, 4 years in a secular prep school. But I was intrigued in speaking with him almost from the first few conversations. He kept mentioning the Swamiji, and he kept mentioning the need for a preceptor or a guru, a teacher. And so I decided that's what I was going to do my paper on, is the meaning of, or the need or the position of the preceptor in spiritual pursuits and spiritual life. And then I had to start doing some serious reading. You know, then I read articles by Srila Prabhupada, and but there was several weeks of nudging in between when I got to the point. And an interesting story, but you know, this can go on forever. But when we had this discussion, this was after several weeks, if not, you know, it was well into the semester, and I was getting ready to do my paper, and it was in fact on the eve of when I was, you know, going to start writing it, that he kept insisting on this, that you have to, this is descending knowledge, you have to get it from a realized source, you can't just make it up, you can't speculate. And I was bucking that because I was a speculator. I was, you know, in the American transcendental thing, Thoreau and Emerson, but they referred to Bhagavad Gita, but they never referred to guru so much. So his concept was foreign to me. I mean, I understood priests, but I wasn't very impressed with them. But he kept harping on that, and so when I kindly walked out the door, he said, just like when you go back to the university, you have to follow signs. You have to follow the road, the directions, or you'll get lost. And I said, no, I can do it blindfolded. And so a storm started, and I got lost. Now, it just so happened that going straight down, I veered, and I ended up going parallel to, you know, instead of going this way, I started going, let me see, going down there, it would be going west. And by the time I noticed that I had missed my exit, I was already halfway to a cabin that my parents had, because my mother was from Vermont. And they had a cabin on Lake, it's a big lake up there anyway, it's 21 miles long. It's a big Indian name. And they had a cabin up there, and I ended up being closer to it. I couldn't turn around. I was in a VW Bug, And the snow already was over a foot deep, and I was going in that direction, so I kept going. And by the time I got within a half mile of that, the snow underneath it, I was already crossing the fields towards where the cabins were. And I had to abandon the car, and I walked to the cabin. I was snowbound for 3 days to write this paper. That was all Krishna's direction. He just socked me there, and I spent the next 3 days totally snowbound. And that's when I realized that, yeah, you got to watch directions. So I took it seriously from then. And then I wrote Prabhupada a letter. That was in January. I had to stay around for a while because I was the best man at my brother's wedding, which was that January, or during the break, the Christmas break. It was just after New Year's. And I remember the toast. I had fake champagne. Everyone else had real, and I was already practicing. I can't touch that. That's alcohol. So I had this, and I said, everyone is looking, for happiness, and the only problem is the material world is full of disappointment and problems. So, and this wasn't the best toast at a wedding, but I got away with it because I was always known as being a bit eccentric. So, but I wasn't shaved or anything. I was just, I was kind of a hippie because I had hair and beard, in fact. But at any rate, I went straight back to the university after the break, and I was worried about the draft. So I enrolled in all my classes, and packed up my bag, told my brother, come to the place, and I left the people that I was staying with, the men, and there's like 4 of us in this small apartment. I gave them the Happenings record. I said, just keep listening to that. They were getting sick of it after a while. They were either going to become devotees or get sick of it, but I'm not sure what they did with it. But I was playing it day in, day out. And I had that chapati, and that was another side story. I had that chapati, the first chapati, and I would take a little piece until I went back to the temple.
Srila Prabhupada to me is my Nitya Gurudev, and he is a Manjari in the line of Rupa Goswami, and whenever the time comes to go back to Godhead, he will be there to introduce me to Braj. And one time, Prabhupada, we were sitting in the room, and there were some devotees talking, and he said that the disciple and guru relationship is eternal. Even and he said that if you do not become perfect, pure devotees in this life, I will come again in next life in some form or other to guide you. And I will come again, third, and again, as many lives as you take to become pure devotee, I will keep coming to guide you, to take you back to Godhead. So then he said that, please don't make me come again and again. Try and work hard so that maybe in 1 or 2 lives you finish, or this life you finish. Don't make me come again and again, like that he said. So this is the Guru. He is a Nitya Guru to me. And until I am in Braja, as in whatever my Siddha form is, my spiritual form, he will be there all the way till that point, and thereafter also. So our relationship is eternal.
While I was still at the university, before I had actually withdrawn, I wrote Srila Prabhupada, and I explained to him that I was not satisfied with what I was doing there. I wanted to become more involved with the teachings, with his teachings. And I didn't get a response for a few weeks, and being impetuous and not the most not good at waiting, I left the university, did, as I said, withdrew everything, but I enrolled in classes because I was afraid of getting drafted. As soon as you got out, you get drafted. So I enrolled in classes. And I went with a backpack to New York with a letter from Shivananda to show to, as a bona fide student. I wanted to, he said, this is what you do, you go there. And so I went there, and Brahmananda, greeted me and kind of, saw the letter, and he invited me in, and I got my spot on the floor at 26 2nd Avenue. And I had saved up about $500 or $600 or $800, whatever, and he liked that. And Prabhupada mentioned in the letter, he says, take care of that boy that paid the rent, or something like that gave this money. And he apologized for not, in his infinite mercy, but Srila Prabhupada apologized for not writing sooner, but he was traveling. And, and I'm not sure, this was early in '68, this was January '68. And he said, you can come and live with me for a while, and then, but don't have to worry about leaving the university. Well, I wrote him back immediately, and I said, I've already left the university. And he said, that's all right. The education may be bad. It may be bad, but studying is not bad. And, so you educate yourself in my books now. If you left the university, fine, do it. But do it, now you continue to study. Don't just drop the concept of education, but use my books.
My sister told me that that Srila Prabhupada was coming, and would I like to spend a few days at the temple? And I said, sure. And so I came, and it just was life-changing. I don't know how else to put it. It was life-changing because I think even before I met Prabhupada, I saw his amazing qualities through his devotees. And I was really mesmerized by so many beautiful people. Like, I'd never met people like this before. And Rukmini and Ragatmika, all these people, and Ananga Manjari, she was giving Brahma. So I thought this was what the temple was like, but actually it was like all the temples in the Northeast had come down to Brooklyn because Prabhupada was there. So they were having Brahmacharini classes, and Ananga Manjari would give those, and I was just, loving it. And then Prabhupada came. And I had been seeing pictures of Prabhupada for years, and he was really, I remember he's just very small and very humble, and, but when I went home after that 3 days, my roommate, Abby, showed me this album, and it was the Radha Krishna Temple album, and there's a picture of Srila Prabhupada on the back. And I said, oh, that's my spiritual master, to myself. And then I realized that I had that thought, and I just kind of brought me to tears that I had admitted that I had accepted him like that.
When Srila Prabhupada came to New York, we of course greeted him at the airport, and I thought he was larger than life. He looked like he was at least 6 or 7 feet tall, and he was floating, and all the standard things I'm sure you've heard a million times. But he was magnificent and angelic, is all you can say, and he had. That was the first impression was he was just the most genteel person I've ever seen. So and he moved right into the apartment in the back there. And one of the first things that happened after a few days And this is to one of the first things that I had as an interaction with Srila Prabhupada, is that his drainage from his apartment was backing up. It wasn't working. It was backing up in that little courtyard back there. And so, you know, I'm a fix-it-up guy. So I grabbed the shovel and I started digging. And the brahmachari was saying, "What are you doing? You know, this is Sudra work." And I'm digging. I said, "No, Prabhupada, it doesn't have a drain. I'm going to find out what's wrong." And I saw this stuff bubbling, and I'm down there and slinging the mud around. And then they went running up to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Vamanadev, I don't know if I was initiated, but I don't think I was yet. That, you know, Bhakta Bob is down there digging in the hole, digging in the thing. And he says, "We shouldn't be doing that, should we? It's Muchi, isn't it?" He says, "No, that's devotional service." You know, so so that was the first thing. I saw that Prabhupada was pragmatic, and he was extremely, you know, there was nothing phony. There was nothing that you could say, but because I appreciated that.
I think I don't know whether it's inspiration, but the event which made me come to Prabhupada is one service I did in London to one very beautiful looking devotee who was trying to sell magazines on the street, and he was covered by some Indian people who were demoralizing him by saying that he is doing a big mistake by being a follower of Krishna, and that they are from India and they are going to, they know all about this is heathen worship, and you are a born Christian, you should not do this. And I felt this boy was sweating and feeling shaken up, and so I intervened in that crowd and I said to them that I am also from India, and you know, this is wonderful. Are you selling this magazine? Can I buy one of these magazines? And suddenly, as soon as I came there, those people went away, and this boy was very, very blissful again, and I bought the magazine, and I even gave him some extra money, and he became radiant and happy again. So I think when you serve a devotee of Krishna, that is what brings you. This is one service I did which brought me later on when I was in Canada. I came across the devotees and I joined over there.
The first letter, in response to my letter, he told me to go and live with him, and that he will train me up, or he will instruct me, because I was asking him all these questions. He said, I will answer all your I will instruct you. And then when I didn't get that letter, of course, until I had already joined the movement in moving in sense, in the second letter he said, well, then that may not be, that's all right that you're there and you didn't come here, you know, because I didn't have any more money to go there. He said, I will be coming to you. I will be coming there, and we can talk then. He said, then he said, learning from Brahmananda, because he is repeating everything that I say, is the same as learning from me. So you're in good hands, is the way he put it. So that told me a lot. Just that letter alone showed me that, first of all, Prabhupada had tremendous respect and confidence in his leading devotees, that they would be able to take the charge when Prabhupada wasn't there. And also that Prabhupada, I mean, he doesn't know me. He said, come and live with me. And he actually invited me in 3 different times to come and live with me. Once I was really having a dark moment. This is 3, 4, 5 years into the movement. And he says, come and stay with me for some time. I will dispel all your doubts. I didn't go. I came back, you know, to my senses, and things were right. But he invited me several times like that.
So it's Janmashtami, right? And this was the first time in my life I had ever fasted. And it was midnight already, and we had the arati, because that's what you do on Janmashtami. And I was thinking, okay, I can just get through this arati. And then we can take prasadam. And Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasana, and we had beautiful artik. And then it was time for the Nishringa prayers, and I was thinking only 5 more minutes. And then kirtan was over, and I kind of just shot up, ready and raring to go for the prasadam line. Prabhupada just remained sitting on the Vyasasana, and he said, let's read from Krishna book. So they opened the Krishna book and read from the first chapter, and that was the first time I ever heard the name Bhumi, because in that chapter it explains that Bhumi went to the ocean of milk, and she assumed the form of a cow and went to the ocean of milk with Lord Brahma, and was overburdened by all the demoniac kings, and they were and she was pleading to Krishna to please appear on this earth. And we read that whole chapter, and then I was thinking, wow, now we can take prasadam. and then so the chapter was over, and Prabhupada said, keep reading. So we read the second chapter. I know that, what is that chapter? The Prayers of the Personified Vedas. It's really long. I think we read that whole chapter, and I don't know if it's the second or the third chapter, but he was done reading. We read 3 chapters altogether, and we read till 2 o'clock in the morning. And Prabhupada just sat there relishing the pastimes of Krishna, and everybody else in the temple room was falling asleep. There was Prabhupada and the altar with Vrindavan Chandra, and 2 rows of sannyasis, and all their dandas were falling forward as they nodded off. And it was just such an, I don't know, it was a new life experience. And we finally, at 2 o'clock, we had a feast, and that was my first experience fasting in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, who had not a care about his body at all. He just drank in the nectar of the pastimes of Lord Krishna.
After I had been a devotee for some time, I was the temple commander, as they called them in those days. I think they still have that position. And I took care of moving the drunks from the stoop and things like that, so people could come in, because we were in the Bowery. It was rough. But one day, this kind of a hippie fellow walked in the door, and he approached Brahma. He said he wanted to talk to the head guy. So I went and got Brahmananda, and the head guy, he came and he said, I have some keys to a bus. And he said, I just want to give it to you. And he says, and here's my bill of sale. And he said, you just have to write me out a bill of sale. So we wrote him out a bill of sale, for $1, keys to a bus. And then then Brahmananda gave me the keys to the bus and said, go get it. It was up in Woodstock. And, so here I am, the penniless brahmachari in New York, and I got to figure out how to get to Woodstock and get this bus, and I have no idea where the bus is or what condition it's in or anything, but it's a bus, and we figured, well, we can use a bus. We'll do something with it. So I made my way up there, did a little, as they call it, Sankirtan, got a few dollars, and took a bus up to Woodstock, and nosed around until I found a bus that the key fit. And it didn't have a windshield and a few other things. And, but I got it started, and I drove it back to New York City. It was barely moving. It had no seats in it. It was painted with flowers and all this stuff. I drove it right through the Lincoln Tunnel, completely illegal. I had no idea. I'm not from New York. And I drove it right to the Lower East Side, and I parked it right in front of the temple. I said, here's our bus. And I cleaned it up. And then I'll make this a little short because I don't want to go on and on. But it does interplay with Srila Prabhupada in a very, very beautiful way. It's been credited to someone else, but this is the real story. When you hear about the bus, this is coming from the source. I picked up the bus, I cleaned it up, and I drove the devotees from New York to where Prabhupada was in Boston. And Prabhupada wanted to see this bus. It was the first bus in ISKCON, okay? So I pull up to the temple, and there's no seats in the bus but the driver's seat. Prabhupada wanted to go for a ride in the bus. So they go, oh boy, what are we going to do now? So we went and got a chair, and the devotees, similar to these chairs, put it right next to me, and they were holding a seat, and there's many devotees that could stuff in that bus. It was a big bus, it was a school bus. But it was, you know, it was clean. I cleaned it because I was getting ready to try to sell it. I even put a kind of a windshield in it of sorts. And didn't have windshield wipers, so it's kind of hard when it rains. You had to stick your head out like this. So, but it worked. So anyway, he wanted to go to the pier where he landed. So I was driving him, and I didn't know the directions well. But some devotee was coaxing me, you know, go here, because I wasn't from Boston. I was from Western Mass. So one of the things that stayed to me and to this point, to this place in my life right now, I'm still here, was that as we were going by, there was a lot of construction. They were taking this building. It was probably several stories high, not a huge building, but they were going to build a skyscraper or a new building. But it was perfect in shape. There's nothing wrong with it. But he was watching it being hit by the ball. And Prabhupada said that should not happen. That is a waste. He said, you should use these things for Krishna. Just repurpose them. So ever since then, you know, now we have all this recycling and stuff. So, but Prabhupada was the first one to see the benefit in repurposing and reusing things. Just changing it. Don't just change it for the sake of changing it. Repurpose it, and don't just destroy and rebuild. That was the thing that he was against. That just remove it and start again, remove it, and just waste all this materials is going down into landfills, and then you build it back, and he said that's all a waste, repurpose. So that was the takeaway from that we went there and we parked and we walked a little bit and walked back and came back with the bus, and then he said, no, you should sell this bus. So that's another story. That's all Prabhupada told me to do with it. So I took it back to New York, and I put some incense burning it, and I played some music, had some devotees in it, and we went around the village and with a big for sale sign on it, and I ended up getting $500 or $600 for it.
One particular incident which was very important for me was that in Hyderabad we had finished the temple, and the next day was the inauguration of the temple, and this Vengal Rao, who was the chief minister, was coming to inaugurate, and there was a big ceremony going on, everything was happening, but it was a last minute thing, and temple cleaning was going on. So that particular night before, all the devotees who were there, the brahmacharis and us all, we were just polishing and cleaning. And we finished work at about 2:33 in the morning. And finally at about 2:33, I sent everyone off and I checked everything, that everything is fine, now it's all done. And I was going up to my room, and I was so tired that I couldn't walk up to my room. And I just slept on the staircase, not far from Prabhupada's room. 4:30 Mangal Arati happened, and after Mangal Arati, there was a devotee called Palika Devi. She was Bhavananda's wife. She came and woke me up on the steps. She says, "What are you doing here? Go quickly, Prabhupada wants to meet you immediately." So I quickly ran and had a cold bath, and within 5 minutes or 7 minutes, I was in his room. And I was full with happiness. I was full with exhilaration that, oh, I did a good job. And I entered with that feeling, and I paid my obeisances with full happiness. And Prabhupada was furious. He was so furious. He just broke me to pieces. He says, where were you? Because from his room he can see the temple and he can see the Mangalarti. He says, where was everyone in Mangalarti? He said, where was everyone because nobody came. They finished work at 2:30. I also was very tired, so we didn't go to Mangalarti. He says, where was everyone in Mangalarti? Nobody was there, and Mangalarti was empty. So I said, I answered back, but Prabhupada, the devotees worked very hard till 2:30 in the night, And when I said that, he was furious. He says, devotee? Who is the devotee here? You call yourself devotee? You are useless, melacha, this, that, and what not, he sweared. When he gets angry, he can say many things, So he was furious and he was saying, you call yourself devotee? How many years have you been doing any service and you call yourself devotee? And he said so many strong words which I cannot exactly remember now, but it brought me to tears and I was just about to break down. And then when he saw that, he suddenly changed and he became opposite. And he says, Mahamsa, the Goswamis of Vrindavan, the 6 Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, they were seeing Krishna all the time, he said. They were seeing Krishna all the time. Krishna was with them in their heart all the time. But they never thought that they were devotee. They were always running from one tree to another tree. Where is Krishna? When will I be blessed to see Krishna? When will I have darshan of Krishna? When will Krishna come to me? They were always in that mood that I am most unfortunate. Krishna is not available to me. They are seeing Krishna, but they never think that they are devotee. So, Trenadapi suni chena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtanya sadhari. This is how he explained, that is all. That's all he said. And this I'll never forget. This I'll never forget, because this is the key to loving sentiment. Humility. Without humility, the doors don't open. Without humility, you cannot say na dhanam na janam na sundarim va kavitam va jagadisha kama. You cannot say that. First that humility. And after that, other things of the shikshas to come. So this is one mood of Prabhupada I saw of him in Braja. Today when I reflect on that, that is why I feel he's a Manjari of Rupa Goswami. And he is assisting Rupa Goswami in the pastimes of Krishna. And the Goswamis were running mad. He said, running one tree to another tree, running to the birds and to the bees, like how Radharani was talking to the bumblebee. The Goswamis were doing that. And they never thought that I am a great devotee. This teaching of his is most striking to me.
I went to a class and this is after I had been working for a week or two. I went to a class, and I was there at the end of the class. I came in the door. And as I came in the door, Prabhupada had just finished the lecture, and I heard the last few minutes of the lecture, but he looked and he saw me, and he said, "Where have you been, Vamanadev?" And oops. I said, I got a job, Srila Prabhupada. I'm working. I'm developing my skills as a builder, as a carpenter, so I can build temples or build for Krishna, something like that. I have it recorded. It's actually in the tape archive. And then he looked at me and just went, "Oh, that's all right." And he just went like that, like just like a doting father. I mean, like, you know, like he knew I was in Maya, but you know, that's all right. That's all right. Just chant. So it was really beautiful. It was really beautiful, and I got a sense of a real connection with Srila Prabhupada from that, and from many instances like that, where he invites me to live with him, and there's another one too I'll come to later.
Fast forward 6 months, it's time for my initiation. It was April 1973. Srila Prabhupada was in New York and there at the initiation. So it is now May 2023, so it's been 50 years now. It's my anniversary. So, Prabhupada was there at the initiation, but I didn't know it then, but I don't think he was feeling real well. So Brahmananda was, Prabhupada was sitting there on the Vyasasan, and Brahmananda was giving the names out and handing us the beads and asking us the 4 rules and regs. So then he told me my name was Bhumi. And I recognized that name from New Vrindavan, and I was a little disappointed. I didn't really. And then my mother was there, and she goes, "I gave you such a beautiful name. The name Nina, and what do you need a new name for?" My mom said. So anyhow.
This is probably the most direct and meaningful, impactful instance I had with Srila Prabhupada. And I was in this interim period still, and I was, kind of, I would come for meals and chant some japa and then go to work. And there was this young lady with a child, a very young infant, a couple months old, a couple weeks old, I don't know, but very young and very vulnerable. And I have a very compassionate or soft heart, and I kind of just talked to her and ate prasadam with her a few times, and there was some attraction, but in those days, that's if you were eating prasadam with someone or going for a walk with someone, you're going to marry that person. That was as simple as that. I mean, and I was a brahmachari, I was an initiated devotee, and you just don't do that unless you have those designs. I had a job, so the word got out, and this is, we were doing this for all of a week, maybe 3 or 4 times we did it, and the word got out that Vamanadev was going to get married. And I got word of that secondhand. And then my brahmachari friends were saying, you got to be careful. You don't want to do that. She's already got a child. You're going to be in trouble. You don't have that good a job. I mean, it's just, you're working, in a sweatshop, it's making furniture. It's not really high paying. You got, be careful, And so I said, oh, geez. And so one of them said that Prabhupada had said that if a woman has a child, she should be satisfied. So I said, oh, that's a good out. And so then the next time I met her, and we were chanting or eating prasadam or something, I said, and by the way, we can't get married, so I think just wanted to let that out, and tell you this. And she said, oh yeah, okay. Well, we hadn't really talked about it, but it was just understood. And so I said, and Prabhupada said that you should be satisfied. That, you have this child, and just be satisfied, and, have a happy life, and see you later, And so I just went off to my job, and I came back for lunch, or maybe this was the weekend. Prabhupada wants to see me in his room. Now, I was often called to Prabhupada's room to do little things, not real interaction, just when he was gone for a walk, I'd go to fix the door or something like that. But this time he wanted to talk to me. I said, oh, great. So I went running out, did my obeisances, and how can I serve you, Prabhupada? How can I serve you, Swamiji? Because he was Swamiji at that time. And he said, did I tell you you cannot marry this girl? And I was I just did a double take. And I said, no, I haven't spoken to you about it. You've never mentioned anything to me about marrying anyone. He said, and then he looked to his servant and said, see, I did not say that. And he looked at me and says, you use your spiritual master for your own purpose. He says, don't ever do that. You have hurt this girl by this, and you have put me on the spot. He says, you must leave LA now. And I want you to take Govinda Dasi to her husband. She needs an escort. So you move her stuff to the airlines, get a ticket, fly with her, and get her to her husband. But you have to leave. So I was banned from LA. I was told by my spiritual master that I had to leave. So that was, but it was the most mercy I ever got. So the lesson I learned from that interaction with Srila Prabhupada and the situation with this young lady was that that your spiritual master is not someone that you use for your own benefit. He said, don't use your spiritual master for your benefit. And it really stuck with me. And don't, just because someone said Prabhupada said, doesn't mean that it pertains to any particular circumstance that you might try to twist into it. Don't try to twist Prabhupada's words for your own convenience, for your own, to make yourself look better, or to rationalize what it is you want to do. So in that sense, that's what I learned from that. And so I don't believe anything that people say unless it's written in his books. And I realized that the book's also contextualized, so read it in its totality. Prabhupada said, he's also quoted as saying, Prabhupada, there's so many things I have said, I have not said. So, and anyway, they're all particular things, so don't use your spiritual master for your own purposes. That's my takeaway.
After I left ISKCON, I kind of stayed away. It was, to me, it is a reaction to my Vaishnava Aparadh, because when I was in my final years of ISKCON, I did a lot of fighting with my own god brothers over ego issues. We were into an ego trip. I was into a major ego trip of I and mine in ISKCON. And in that process, in the GBC meetings and in other situations, I was fighting very strongly with my god brothers. And these were not ordinary fights, it was nasty fighting. And because I committed so many offenses against other devotees, my god brothers as devotees, the punishment of that was that after leaving ISKCON, I had no satsang of devotees. My only satsang was with Prabhupada and through his leelas. But I had no personal association with devotees. And that was very difficult and very painstaking. So anyway, during that time, I traveled all over dhams like Badrinath Dham, Gomukh. I did all these yatras. I went to Amarnath, I went to Muktinath, I went to all these places, dhams, and traveled as a sadhu. I grew my hair, I had a beard, so I used to dress like a sadhu and travel with the sadhus all over India. I went to every Kumbh Mela. I stayed in Kumbh Mela for a whole month, and I mixed with all the sadhus of all types, Vaishnava sadhus, Sitaram Babas, Naga Babas, Shankaracharya Bhaktas, all types of sadhus I met in my experiences. Because when you travel, I used to walk with them, sleep with them, eat with them, beg with them, sleep with them. Like an ordinary sadhu on the road, like these mendicant sadhus, sometimes I would go like that. And so I had experience of all types of sadhus. All types I had experience. But every time I'd meet them and some discussion would come out and I would see their lifestyle and I would see their... I respect all sadhus. I give my respect to every sadhu. But in my heart, every time Prabhupada shines out, because none of them, none, could give what Prabhupada is giving. None of them would give what we are getting through this line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This disciplic succession of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the core. There is no other sadhu or philosophy or anything that can be compared to the greatness of this understanding Braja Leela. Braja Leela, only Chaitanya Mahaprabhu line of disciplic succession gives. Even the Ramanujas, the Vallabhacharyas, the Sri Sampradaya, all these Vaishnava Sampradayas, they go to some level. But Braj Leela, the depth of Braj Leela that Prabhupada has exposed us to, he has exposed it. Now we have to search. He is always there. He is always there to be with us in our search. As I said, he is a Nitya Guru. He is always there. But we can learn from many others also. So, no sadhu in India, and I have met them all, has been able to, which I can see, has given us this. And the purity of Prabhupada, his selflessness, his total 100% giving to Krishna is, I have not seen anywhere.
Well, the next thing I recall was I went to Hawaii, and there I joined the Carpenters Union. I was working at Pearl Harbor. I lost contact with the devotees because they moved, and it took a few weeks before I stumbled upon a Sankirtan party in downtown Honolulu somewhere, and I said, Prabhupada, and they said, Prabhupada's in town. I said, where? And they said, he's in a farmhouse in Kaava. So I didn't know the island that well, but I did know it, and I knew I had an emergency brake that I used for braking. So anyway, I made my way, and I pulled up the driveway, and I could tell right away it was devotees that were there. So I walked in, and they were making lunch for Srila Prabhupada. He was there. He was in the back room. They always had a special darshan room for Srila Prabhupada where he was writing, translating, received guests. And it was almost earshot from the kitchen because it was a small house. And I was there, and they were making prasadam. And as I was speaking to him, Prabhupada said, is that you, Vamanadev? Vamanadev, come here. And so I went, he says, he said again to me, where are you? Where have you been? What are you doing? And I said, well, I have a job now, a real job. I'm building a building at Pearl Harbor. And then the first thing he said to me, are you chanting? He didn't say if I was chanting 16 rounds or anything. He says, are you still chanting? And I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I chant as much as I can. I am chanting, and I am following. And he said, that's all right. He was he wasn't grilling me, he wasn't giving me a hard time. He wanted to know that I was still in touch with the process. And the feeling I got was one of a father, of a loving, doting, or caring guardian, father.
I was in JFK Airport in New York City, and my service was to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books in the airport. And Srila Prabhupada just happened to be leaving that day. So we decided, I was with my distribution partner Sunita, and we And as Srila Prabhupada came in and sat down in the waiting area, we were distributing books in front of him. And this story is actually written down in the little supplemental red books that Satsvarup Maharaj put out. She wrote the story, and so she has a better memory than I do. And but evidently we were distributing books right with Srila Prabhupada standing there, and of course we were telling them that we were showing the people that the author of this book is sitting right here. And so people were like, oh, and they were really buying the books and everything. Prabhupada was watching us, so I don't know. That was quite an honor to be able to do that.
I told Prabhupada that I got a draft notice because they realized I had left the university. Because by this time it was well into the second semester. I got all Fs, surprisingly, but it worked. It gave me enough time to get my foot set in Krishna consciousness and to figure out what I should do. So I was planning to become a CB, to go into the service and work as a CB. That's a person that builds the temporary shelters for the soldiers, non-combatant role. But he said no. He says you shouldn't have anything to do with it. You should approach it and be a conscientious objector. He mentioned someone, I'm not sure who it was, Subal or somebody that had gotten it and they had been approved. He said, you are a student. You are my student. You are a theological student. You are a brahmana. You may be doing carpentry or whatever, but you'll be teaching carpentry. You're a student of Krishna consciousness. And he says, you don't do this. You're not going to this. You shouldn't do that. You should fight it. So I called my father, who was a well-placed, persons like Dan Coyle, and he made an appointment for me. I had to fly all the way to Boston, and I got a conscientious objector. And it was the basis of that, and so that he saved me. He saved me from that, because so many people didn't come back in one piece, or at least even mentally they got damaged, but he didn't want me to do that.
Prabhupada used to, because I don't know how to say it, but he used to tell me to meet a lot of his god brothers, Prabhupada. I used to go to the Bombay Gaudiya Math often, and I used to meet his god brothers quite often. And I feel that there was at one level an intimate relationship with Prabhupada and his god brothers. Although on one level there were some criticisms also, where his god brothers may have criticized him and he may have criticized his god brothers. But there was another level of high interaction which was at that time beyond my understanding. And so, after his disappearance, we were all very young devotees. We were hardly 8, 9, 10, 12 years with him. Many people during his last days, there was just about two weeks before he disappeared, in October I think, he called all of us, the GBC members, and he asked us he just asked us to come and ask what we wanted. So each of the devotees went and said what they wanted. They wanted this position, this. And during that time, there was a group of Indian devotees. I think I had taken Mr. Hari Prasad Badruka in there, and there were some other senior devotees. Indian, not devotees, they were devotees, but they were Indian supporters of ISKCON, senior, important people. And the discussion at that time was that they were telling Prabhupada that you should nominate one person to succeed you. Like in all other ashrams, the Guru nominates one person to succeed, and then we will all back that person. And Prabhupada at that time said, there is no that one person. And he said, I have to make the best use of a bad bargain. These are the words I'll never forget. He says, I have to make the best use of a bad bargain. The bad bargain is that, not that we are bad people, not that we are bad devotees, but the bargain is that I have to leave this planet so soon, and I have not been able to train any of my disciples to come to that level. And therefore, I nominate the GBC, and I nominate these 11 people to do the Diksha, and I hope my God brothers will help. This was the message he gave. But after he left, I feel there was a little, in the leadership, there was a little antagonism with the leaders of ISKCON and his God brothers, which I think would, if that was avoided, we would have been a better organization today. There was antagonism between the leaders and his God brothers. They are also great devotees, and we should not create offense against them also. And this is, I think, one mistake that we made, for which I have suffered, for which some of my God brothers, senior God brothers have suffered, and for which ISKCON has suffered. This is something I feel. Now I think things are okay and things are back in shape. After all, and Prabhupada said that this is not my movement, this is Lord Krishna's movement, Chaitanya Dev's movement. He will take care of everything. In that particular meeting, this is what he said, that this is not I'm just a messenger, I'm just one of the persons. This Krishna's movement, Krishna and Chaitanya Dev will take care of everything. And they have taken care. ISKCON is growing everywhere, but it did take a dip. In the earlier days, it took a dip. A lot of God brothers left the organization, but it could have been better. But I was a part of it. I also was a part. Although I never abused any of his God brothers. I always respect them within my heart as great Vaishnavas. This offense against Vaishnavas is something in our madness we do, but then afterwards we repent.
The major thing that Prabhupada wanted, because he wanted us to preach to colleges. I had a Bhakti Yoga Society at Washington University, and we made several devotees from there. He wanted us to influence the intelligent people, and also seekers of all kinds. It just so happened, I didn't know, I'd never been to St. Louis, but I ended up a block from Lindell and Laclede, which was like the Haight-Ashbury area, all the head shops and stuff. And Forest Park was there, and this was when the Kent State Massacre happened and all that. And we had kirtan parties and prasadam, and people were just coming in droves. I made the front page of the St. Louis Weekend Happenings magazine. Hare Krishna comes to, so that, and I sent that to Prabhupada. He was very pleased. So he really encouraged householders at that time to start temples.
I was in the New York temple, and they were starting to open up airports all over the country so that we could distribute books in them. Barry Fisher was opening them up, and Atlanta Airport had just opened up. it is not like the giant hub it is now. It was a smallish airport at that time, and but they sent me down there to distribute books, and I knew that Srila Prabhupada was coming to New York in a few weeks, so I really didn't want to go because I wanted to see Srila Prabhupada. But I surrendered and I went down to Atlanta. And lo and behold, Srila Prabhupada ended up coming to Atlanta. The only time I think he was ever in the Atlanta temple. So I don't remember greeting him at the airport, but I do remember that when he came in and he sat in the temple room on the Vyasa-san, he said, I was just in Mexico City, I was in Caracas, I was in Miami. He said it like that. He said, but I see you have the best temple. And also I remember that we had a question and answer period, and one boy was kind of asking Srila Prabhupada kind of one of those questions where he was anticipating a response. And he said, Srila Prabhupada, what pleases you the most? And Srila Prabhupada, he expected Srila Prabhupada to say, if you distribute my books. But Srila Prabhupada said, if you love Krishna, that will please me. And also in Atlanta was, I was not a cook in those days. I was a Sankirtan devotee, but they needed people to cook Prabhupada's lunch. So I knew how to cook because my mother was a sensational cook, and we also have the Hare Krishna cookbook. So I made Srila Prabhupada urd dal kachoris. And in my life, that's the only thing I ever made for Srila Prabhupada was urd dal kachoris, which happened to be his favorite. And the plate went in, and all of us that were cooking, we sat outside the door, waiting for the plate to come out. And I was anxiously waiting to see if he had eaten any of the kachoris, and there were 2 kachoris missing. So he had eaten 2 kachoris. So I was very happy.
I operated the temple, and I got the desire to go to Dallas. But en route to Dallas, I did a little tour. Because I had been stationed for 2 years doing my conscience objector thing and working in the hospital and managing the temple. Organized now. I bought the temple. It was just a small building, but I bought it with from an elderly couple that were relying on the payment for their pension, because I bought it off there. I had no money. I talked them into selling it, please, and you take back the mortgage and I'll pay you. And so they sold it to me, just boom, like that. So anyway, I handed it over to the temple, succeeding temple. I'm not mentioning names, but and I went for a little tour. I had a VW van at that time, and then we ended up in Oklahoma City for a short while, a couple months, because I wanted a breather, and I started a small temple there. It wasn't really a temple. I just wrote Hare Krishna on the porch. It was on a main street, and I came back from work, and there was a whole room full of devotees. A traveling party caught me. They found me, and it was just north of Dallas. It was in Oklahoma City, outside of Oklahoma City. And so I said, yeah, I was just taking a break for a while. And so we had prasadam, and they talked me into coming there. So I started in the Gurley Street. They needed a lot of help there. And I'm a builder by then. And so I did a lot of work there. And after being there for several months, I found out, maybe 6 months, that they closed my temple in St. Louis. I didn't even think. I got in my truck, put my tools in it, and I left my wife and child there. At the time, I only had the one child. I ended up having 4, but I ended up with one child. And I went to St. Louis. And I started taking the boards off the thing, and I opened it up, and they said, you can't do that. The GBC or the temple, I won't say the word GBC, but so cut that one out. But the temple authorities told me that, that temple is closed. I said, you can't close it. They just letting it go. Those people need the money. That's on me. I made back all the rent. I gave them the money. They were happy, and and I reopened the temple. And then I wrote Prabhupada, I have to open this temple. He said, of course. And he said, and then he just told the leaders, he said, leave Vamanadev alone. Let him do it. He's a special case. Let him do it. So I got it going again. It never closed. Never closed. What I felt from Prabhupada was that I had my backer. I had someone that had faith that I was going to do it, and that it was the right thing to do, and that it should be done, and that I wasn't easily dissuaded, and I was determined. I was determined to start it, I was determined to build it, and I was determined to reopen it. And I could do it, because I could make it happen. And I made it happen, and it stuck. And I'm glad for that. And I told this to about a year ago or so, they contacted me from St. Louis, and they wanted to know the story of St. Louis. But it's just on phone. And I told them, I said, you almost weren't there. And I told them that little story.
We went, in 1975, we went to India for the opening of the Mayapur Temple and the Krishna Balaram Mandir. And we were there for 6 weeks with Srila Prabhupada. And during that 6 weeks, we took a side trip to Hyderabad, and there was a sweet maker, a Bengali sweet maker there named G. Pulareddy, and he had a big home in Hyderabad, and he invited all the devotees over for lunch. So a big group of us went and were taking prasadam on the front lawn. Srila Prabhupada was in the house. And after I was done, I was looking for a place to wash my hands, and walked into the house, and the door was open, and I saw that Srila Prabhupada was in this little room, and he was talking to the family, I guess the Pulareddys, and there were at least 3 of the ladies of the house, and some of the men too. And I was thinking, should I go in? Should I not go in? But I decided, do it. You'll never get a chance. Just go in. And so I went in, and I sat down really close to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada was talking to the ladies of the house, and they were laughing, and it was very jovial. And he was telling them about how, when women come in the picture, everything gets complicated. And then he said, even Lord Ram, he was God himself. But when Sita came in the picture, then there was so much trouble. And all the time they were laughing, and he just, Prabhupada had a beautiful sense of humor. And and the other thing about that is that people kept coming in the room, because when I went in, I was maybe the first devotee, and then the second devotee came in, third devotee, and before you knew, the whole room was filling up. And then there were windows, and then they were standing outside and looking in the windows, and there's just like people everywhere by the time it was finished. It was maybe the most intimate association I ever had with Prabhupada. And very funny, because I like humor, and Prabhupada had the best humor.
So another encounter I had with Srila Prabhupada, there was 2 walks I went on, and one that I remember distinctly, walking in Dallas at some forested and wooded area, and Prabhupada would ask what type of tree this is or what type of plant, and he was shocked that we were pretty much dull, and he knew more, and he was from India, he knew more about his environment. We walked through, and so it just struck me that he was very aware and wanted to learn, wanted to know these things, just because it's just, to just know what's there in front of you. But another time in Dallas, I used to be, whenever he would sit on the back, on this sidewalk area off the temple, it was a place where he could get some fresh air from his room. Either on Gurley Street or on that other street, I can't remember, but it was just a sidewalk area. And it was an area that got very hot in the afternoon. The sun came up and it was really hot. And so we were trying to fan him and it wasn't working. So he said, go get some water. So someone went and got a bucket of water, and I was watching. And Prabhupada took the water, he said, now pour it on the concrete. And they just poured water on the concrete. And it was so hot, it just steamed up. And then he said, now fan me. And he said, this is how we do it in India. And I said, wow. There's nothing Prabhupada doesn't know. There's no way that, he's so organic and so much in touch with what's around him. So those two things were lessons of be aware of your surroundings and how to use your surroundings, how to know your surroundings, so that you can better serve, better be more in tune.
We were in the, so many of the pastimes that I remember with Srila Prabhupada happened in the airport. And we were in the United Terminal, and Srila Prabhupada was departing. And we would always know, we knew how to work the airports because we were there every day. So we found out, where which plane was going to Dallas or wherever he was going. And we were there like waiting for him at the terminal. So I had a really, really good seat. And there's pictures of it too, and I'm sitting like right in the front, maybe the second row or something like that. And Srila Prabhupada, I had a Krishna book on my lap. And we were sitting there for a while, and then Srila Prabhupada noticed the Krishna book, and he said, you read to everybody. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I said, what shall I read? And Srila Prabhupada said, you open anywhere, it's like sugar. It doesn't matter what side of the sugar you taste, it's sweet. And so I read the story of Krishna kidnapping Rukmini. And to Srila Prabhupada, I got that special time with him.
Well, everything I know about spiritual life is through Prabhupada's books. And his books have everything in it. And even till today, even after Prabhupada is not only in his physical form, even after he left his body, he still is our Guru, and he comes in many forms. Sometimes he gives wisdom through the heart or through the mind, and through his books. He's always there in his books, and we read those books, and at every level he's giving the inspiration till today. Till today, the same book I read again and again, but the wisdom is different. The realization is different. And I remember just before he got sick, just before he went to Vrindavan, actually before that, he called me one day to his room, and he said that there is one thing I have not done which I want to finish. And I want to finish the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he said, I cannot do it with all this management. I want to go to Kodaikanal, where his personal Dr. Ghosh was his personal health advisor. He had a lot of confidence in Dr. Ghosh. So he says, I want to go in Kodaikanal. You please arrange with Dr. Ghosh for me to stay at his house. And for 6 months, I want to be there and do my translation of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So by the time I went there and we started building a room for Prabhupada and trying to get the arrangement made, he felt more sick, and then from Bombay he went to Vrindavan, and then he continued and stayed in Vrindavan. So he could not do that, and I think that was what he really felt, something unfinished in his experience. He could not finish the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He wanted to do that very badly. He wanted to cut out, because Kodaikanal there was not much chance for communication. Therefore he wanted to be isolated. So management would be taken care of by his other servants, and he could be concentrating. He needed some 6 months to finish the 10th canto. And this was, I think, his last desire in active service, and he could not do that. But his greatest contribution, I think, besides the many other, everything he did is a great contribution, but his books are his greatest contribution.
Srila Prabhupada is the most kind and honest, merciful, gentle, and gentlemanly person that could possibly be. He doesn't have an envious bone in his body. He's not, if there is such a thing of anger, it's not the same as our anger. It's not based on ego. There's nothing he does. Everything he does, everything I've ever witnessed and everything I've ever read and every feeling I ever have is a person that's just completely honest and sold to Krishna as his servant. And I can't envision. I would just love to get when I get a glimpse of his love, his mercy, is what keeps me going on. All I do is think of just being in his presence, and I can't. And being in his, and it's not pure. It's not sentiment. It's the real feeling that you have of being protected, knowing that what he says is true, and that truthfulness and that love that he shows is so genuine that it's a bond that you can't break. You can try to give it up, but you can't. You can try to break it, but it's unbreakable. We've been bitten, we've been infected. So you could try. Prabhupada, there's a verse that says if you want to forget Krishna, Krishna will show you how to forget, and he'll show you. But if you want to remember, and if you have faith in the spiritual master, then you're really fortunate. And I'm fortunate enough to really be a disciple and a follower of Srila Prabhupada. I feel very fortunate for that.
Even more so than seeing the qualities in Srila Prabhupada himself, I saw them in the devotees. And that was really the quality of the people that he attracted was just astounding. And it was just such a pleasure to be able to serve with these people and live with these people. And they were all like, and also the other thing about Srila Prabhupada, that was, you know, he went all the way with it. He was all in. And when he was into something, he didn't stop. And, you know, he was just focused on it until I remember that there was a video I saw. He was lying on his deathbed. He could barely talk, and he was still translating his books. Jayadvaita Swami was holding up the microphone, and he was still translating that last chapter on his deathbed. And, you know, I just think, you know, whatever you give your best. Just give your all. And that was Srila Prabhupada. He was always giving. He didn't hold back.
Je anilo